Charlie, what's been you just obviously talked with the football coaches. What's been the kind of the thought process going with this week here at the Big 12 spring meetings?
Well, I was here mostly to talk about three things. Number one, governance, which is sort of embedded in the larger conversation around the settlement. Spent some time talking about the settlement, obviously, and continuing to do some of the prep work with the hope and anticipation that eventually that gets approved. And then talked a bit about the basketball tournament and the conversations we're having with CBS and WBD about expanding that. And those are obviously all, appropriate things to be talking about now, because they all have consequences with respect to what happens over the course of the summer and into the next academic and athletic season that starts in the fall.
Where do you think it's staying on basketball expansion part?
We've had good conversations with CBS and WBD. I think our goal here is to try to sort of either get to yes or no sometime in the next few months, because there's a lot of logistical work that would be associated with doing this if we were to go down this road. I mean, just think about the opening weekend. If you want to, just the travel alone is complicated.
Expansion could come next year.
Well, that would be the goal, yeah, to try and do this for next year, which is why the window to actually negotiate it will probably end sometime early summer.
Brett said 76 teams would be ideal. Do you have a number?
We've been talking about 72 and 76. Those have been the numbers the basketball committee's talked about. It would obviously be one or the other. It won't be more.
What would be the benefits to adding expanding the tournament?
Well, so here's the way I think about it, and you should ask others and see what they think. But there are, the AQs really matter, right, in men's and women's basketball. And they've created some wonderful stories and some amazing games and incredible narratives over the years. The AQs being, if you win your conference tournament, you get into the basketball tournaments on the men's and the women's side. So that means straight out of the gate, you got 34 teams that are going to be in the tournament automatically. No matter where they were ranked during the regular season, they're going to be there come March. And I think that means at the end of the day, if you have a tournament that's got 64 or 68 teams in it, you're going to have a bunch of teams that are probably among what most people would consider to be the best 68 or 70 teams in the country that aren't going to make the tournament, period. Because you're going to have a whole bunch of people who win their conference tournaments who aren't in that group. And so the point behind going from 68 to 72 or 76 is to basically give some of those schools that probably were among the 72, 76, 68, 64 best teams in the country a way into the tournament. A few years ago, for example, Indiana State lost to Bradley in the conference tournament. Now, people thought Indiana State was a really great team and a fun team to watch, and if the tournament had been a little bigger, they would have been in it, but they didn't make it because they didn't win their conference tournament. They then went on to, they made it to the finals of the NIT and played Seton Hall, and they lost to Seton Hall in what I thought was one of the best basketball games of the spring that year. So the way I think about it is it's a way to get some of the teams into the tournament who would, as at-large teams, would get in. But given the fact that we really believe in the AQ process and the opportunities that creates for everybody to have a stake in the tournaments on the men's and women's side, we definitely leave some teams out that, probably belong there. And it's a way to get them in.
What's the latest you've heard from President Trump about a commission for college sport? We have not heard all that much outside of some of the stuff that's already been discussed. I think what I said about it at the time when it was first posed that it might happen was, I think we have some legitimate issues in Washington. I think we've done a lot of things that Washington wanted us to do. The post-eligibility health insurance program across all three divisions, the guaranteed scholarships for up to 10 years if you need them to graduate, the access to mental health and well-being services with no copays. I mean, we've done a bunch of things that were important. to Washington with respect to some of their issues with us. And I think we've seen enough in the, especially in the sort of burgeoning state law space, to be able to make a pretty compelling case about state preemption and some of the other issues we're dealing with. And I, from my point of view, as many voices at the table works for me, because I think these issues are important, and they certainly matter a lot to schools and to kids and to college sports.
Charlie,
I have one more question.
there's been some conversation up at the SEC spring meetings just up the road in Destin about the NCAA. Greg St. Louis saying there are members in his room asking why they're still in it. What's your reaction to those kind of things coming out?
I think one of the, first of all, I spend a lot of time with Commissioner Sankey and several presidents in the SEC on a lot of stuff. Their voice matters a great deal, in part because they take college sports seriously and play at a very high level, just like the Big 12 does and just like many others do. I tend to believe what I hear from people when I speak to them directly, and I certainly think the settlement creates a very different way to manage many of the so-called money issues, which I support. And I also like the idea of having those issues dealt with in a way where the plaintiffs will continue to be involved, the court special master will continue to be involved. There's an arbitration process that operates under a federal law that can do fact-finding. I think those are all really good things, and I think they address many of the concerns a lot of the folks who play at that level had about the way the NCAA process worked generally. But I think there's a path forward here where we can figure out a way to keep everybody in a place where they're comfortable that they're both being heard and having the opportunity to play and compete.
Okay, thanks guys, appreciate you, appreciate you.